Hana was a 19-year-old student at a university just outside of Tokyo. Her grades were excellent and her tuition was paid for with scholarships. One day in early summer, a special guy in the classroom caught her attention. He wore a shirt with a stretched-out collar and didn't even bring the textbook to class. Hana thought he was completely different from the other students as she watched him from behind earnestly taking notes. After class, the guy got up and left, and Hana chased after him, asking him to fill in the attendance sheet or he would be marked absent. But the guy said he was not a student there, and if that bothered, he wouldn't come anymore. Then he turned and left, and also helped up a fallen child. This made Hana have a favorable impression of him, so she chased after him again, saying if he didn't have a textbook, he could share hers. The movie doesn't give his name, so I'll call him he. Since then, Hana had been waiting for his arrival every day. He was a porter who rushed to class every time he finished his work. Hana often took him to sneak into the library to study together. Love sprouted as they spent time together. One night, they came to a hillside. The sky was crisp and clean. He decided to tell Hana his secrets, so he told Hana to close her eyes and then began to transform. When Hana opened her eyes, he had turned into a wolf man. He said his father was a descendant of the Japanese wolf, which had become extinct about 100 years ago. He was the child born from the union of the Japanese wolf and a human. With both wolf and human blood, he was the last of his kind. He asked Hana if she was afraid of him. Hana replied firmly that she's not afraid, because it's him. They got together and life was simple, but very happy. Soon, Hana got pregnant and gave birth to our main character named Yuki in a small apartment. They were afraid to go to the hospital to give birth because Hana was worried that if their child had been born as a wolf, the doctors would have been surprised. The following year, on a rainy day, Hana gave birth to Yuki's younger brother named Aim. However, on that day, her husband disappeared. Hana took the two babies to the street to look for him and finally found him under the bridge, but what she found was his dead body. Maybe he instinctively went to hunt for food for his new baby. Maybe he wanted something nutritious for Hana, who was recovering from the birth. While hunting, he accidentally fell into the water and drowned, leaving his driver's license as his relic. Hana promised that she would make sure to raise the two children properly. A few years had passed, and the young Yuki was very lively. She was always hungry, crying for food from morning until night. When she was angry or upset, her fur would bristle, and she would turn into a wolf. Unlike Yuki, her sickly brother, Aim, ate little. His nightly cries made it hard for Hana and her neighbors to rest properly. Hana had to quit school and leave her part-time job in order to take care of them. Hana really didn't know how wolf children are raised. She regretted not asking her husband about how he was raised as a child. When they got sick, she didn't even know whether the pediatrician or the veterinarian she should take them to. One day, Hana asked them whether they wanted to be human or wolves, but they didn't answer. Hana decided to move to a place deep in the mountains where the siblings could choose whichever they wanted. They moved to a dilapidated house in the countryside with no one living around. It's the perfect place for Hana. Yuki was excited to move to a new home. She greeted the ants and played on the abandoned roof, while Aim was timid and stayed alone. Hana was busy cleaning up the house, sweeping the floor, cleaning the windows and sink, and leaving countless cuts on her hands. Soon they adapted to life here, shopping in the supermarket for groceries, cooking together, and taking a bath together. Without a source of income, Hana realized that she had to be frugal, and she decided to grow her own food to eat. So the next day she started cutting the grass and planting seeds with her two children. Some time later, the vegetables finally grew, but after a while, they withered. Because of the lack of fertilizer, Hana started to go to the mountain to collect some leaves from the woods as fertilizer, and she was determined to succeed. But farming is not an easy thing. Fortunately, an elder named Narasaki in the village, who seemed to be very mean but was actually very kind, came to teach her how to grow crops. At harvest time, Hana distributed the extra crops to other villagers. In gratitude, the villagers gave different crops in return. The villagers were all very kind to Hana's family. Later, Hana realized that it was Nirasaki who asked everyone to take care of her because Nirasaki's heart ached for Hana that she had to bring up 2 children alone. Hana's family slowly settled into the village and their lives gradually improved. Soon, it's winter, and the kids were excited, happily running into the snow to play. The family laughed happily, and the 2 kids started to unleash their nature and turned into wolves. Aim saw a waterfall that inspired his hunting instincts, but he accidentally stepped on his scarf and fell into the water, almost drowned. Yuki saw the situation and quickly rushed to rescue her brother. Fortunately, there was no serious injury. After this incident, Aim was no longer weak and timid. He was brave enough to face any challenges in the future. Hana hugged the 2 children tightly, with worry, surprise, and happiness in her eyes. After a few years, Yuki is 6 years old. She is going to elementary school. Hana repeatedly tells her not to turn into a wolf in front of others. Yuki is a little nervous on her first day of school, but soon, she adapts to it, becomes active in class, and plays with her classmates on the playground. On the other hand, Hana finds a job as a nature conservationist and takes Aim to work with her. On her first day, she has to observe a wolf. Looking at this wolf, Aim starts to miss his father, and Hana misses him too. Sometime later, Aim also reaches school age, but he doesn't like school and often skips it, but goes to see and talk to the wolf at his mother's workplace. One day, a transfer student named Sohei comes to school. When he passes by Yuki, he says she smells like a dog and asks if Yuki has raised any animals. Yuki is very nervous, fearing that her identity as a wolf child would be discovered. She starts to run away from Sohei, but the more Yuki runs away, the more Sohei likes to pester her. He keeps following Yuki, making Yuki nervous and worried. Finally, she can't control herself from turning into a wolf and accidentally scratches Sohei's ear. They are taken to the principal's office and their parents arrive here. Hana keeps apologizing to Sohei's parents. When asked who hurt Sohei, Sohei explains that the one who scratched his ear was a wolf, not Yuki. Yuki feels very guilty because she couldn't resist the transformation. She is afraid that she will not be able to return to school if her identity is discovered and will lose everything she has. Sohei is worried that Yuki will stop coming to school, so he comes to Yuki's house and brings her breakfast every day. Hana is curious if Sohei knows Yuki is a wolf child, so she comes to ask him about that day. Sohei just says, that day, he saw a wolf for a split second, and when he recovered consciousness, he was bleeding. So the wolf was the one who did it, and it wasn't Yuki's fault. Yuki is relieved he doesn't know her identity. Sohei knows that Yuki feels guilty, so he takes Yuki's hand and puts it on his wound, saying that it doesn't hurt anymore. At this moment, Yuki is relieved. She stops running away from Sohei and becomes good friends with him. On the other hand, Aim comes home and says he is grateful to his teacher and wants to bring Hana over to meet him. Hana is very happy and then follows Aim to the woods. It turns out that the teacher Aim was talking about is not a school teacher, but a fox in the forest who is in charge of everything in the mountains as a guardian. It turns out that Aim often runs to the forest to follow the fox to learn survival skills, cross rugged valleys, hunt in open meadows, learn to find water sources, and run fast in the woods. He appreciates the majesty and difference of nature. Aim is so intoxicated that he says he wants to be a wolf, and he has already planned his life, so he comes home and tells Yuki about his thoughts and wants Yuki to study with the fox as well. However, Yuki says she is not interested at all and coldly scolds Aim for not going to school. Aim says he doesn't need to go to school because he is a wolf, but Yuki retorts that they are humans and she has decided not to become a wolf anymore. They get into a fight. But this time Yuki is no match for Aim's strength. Hana feels depressed when she sees they are bruised and battered. She knows that both children have chosen their own paths, whether to become a human or a wolf. Still, this makes her very upset, because Aim makes her feel stranger and stranger. She becomes afraid of losing Aim. A few months later, in summer, it begins to rain frequently. Aim goes into the mountain more often than usual, fearing that the continuous rain would affect his teacher and the plants and the animals in the mountain. His teacher accidentally hurts his leg, so he can't move and is dying. Aim thinks that someone has to take over all the things his teacher has been doing on the mountain. Aim goes home and tells Hannah that he intends to be his teacher's successor and take charge of the mountain, but Hannah immediately refuses. She thinks Aim is just a child, not an adult, and can't possibly take on this responsibility. She pleads with Aim not to go into the mountains again, but Aim doesn't agree. The next day it rains heavily and Yuki's school is closed. Hannah wants to ask Aim to accompany her to pick up Yuki from school, only to find that Aim is gone. She runs into the mountain in a hurry to find her child. After all, in her eyes, Aim is just a 10-year-old child. At school, parents pick up their children one after another, with only Yuki and Sohei left behind. Sohei says his parents have divorced and no one cares about him, but he doesn't lose hope for life. He says he will become a boxer or a wrestler and live like a lone wolf. Seeing him share his story so sincerely, Yuki is no longer afraid and turns into a wolf. She tells him the wolf that hurt him was her. Sohei is not surprised at all, because he has long known that Yuki is a wolf child, just like when Hannah first learned that her husband was a wolf man. There is no fear in Sohei's eyes, but adoration. Yuki finally relieves that being a human or a wolf is not as important as she thought. Sohei promises her he won't tell anyone her secret. In the mountain, Hannah is anxiously looking for her son. It is slowly getting dark, and due to the slippery path and the darkness, she accidentally falls down the hill and is still worried about Aim's safety before she passes out. Hannah dreams of her husband. He tells Hannah, Aim has found his own world he wants, so don't worry about him. After a while, the heavy rain stops. Aim finds his mother, carries Hannah to the parking lot at the bottom of the mountain, and prepares to leave. Hannah wakes up at this moment. Looking at Aim's back as he turns to leave, she shouts and asks him, Are you going to leave? But I haven't done anything for you yet. Hearing her words, Aim rushes up the mountain, perhaps knowing that he can't bear to leave if he stays any longer. A long wolf's howl comes from the top of the mountain, and Hannah shouts through tears for Aim to take care of himself and live well. In the end, Yuki goes to junior high school. Hannah looks back on the 12 years she spent raising Yuki and Aim and is very satisfied. Hannah gave up her comfortable city life and brought her 2 children to the countryside. She repaired the broken house alone and took care of everything inside to make it feel like a home. She was self-reliant and planted the fields outside the house. But she still thinks that she has done nothing for her children when Aim leaves at the end. Whenever I see her tearfully telling Aim to live well, I can't hold back my tears. Even though Hannah didn't want to let go of Aim, she still chose to let go of her child and let him go the way he wanted to go, which took a lot of courage. This anime movie is called Wolf Children. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more stories like this if you enjoy.